What's up? I'm Nick DiStefano. My sobriety date is September 5th, 2018. Today is December 17th, 2020. So that's 834 days clean and sober for me today. That's about 2 years and 3 months, roughly. The purpose of this video is to share my story and to possibly help anybody out there who needs to hear a story. Because that's how I did it, was listening to other people's stories. That helped me tremendously. And now I think it's time to share my story publicly. Let's go back to when I was about 16. Growing up, I never drank very much. I drank maybe 2 or 3 beers a year, and I was always under adult supervision. Every time I drank those 2 or 3 drinks a year as a kid, I always felt so much better. I was in a euphoric state, and I always wanted more. And I knew that early on about myself. I knew I had an addictive personality. I recognized that by the time I was about 13. But let's go to when I was 16. I was a junior in high school. I had just started making friends. I had just started getting good grades. I never had many friends as a kid. I didn't have the best grades. But my junior year, everything kind of turned around. I don't know why exactly that is. I think it was a self-confidence thing. I became more self-confident. I got a girlfriend. I had about a 3.5 GPA, and I had a lot of friends. When I was 16, 17, I didn't drink much still. I was afraid of drinking because I knew I had an addictive personality. Back then, everything I tried, whether it was weed, cigarettes, chewing tobacco, anything, I got addicted to it. And I stayed away from alcohol because I had a feeling that I was going to get hooked on it. The night I graduated high school, me, my girlfriend, and 3 other friends got together. We all went over to my girlfriend's house, and we sat in her backyard, and we started drinking. And that was the most I had drank all throughout high school, was that one night that I graduated. And it was maybe only 5 or 6 beers, if that. But I felt good. And I thought, okay, this is one of the best feelings in the world. This is one of the happiest moments of my life. I want to feel like this all the time. I've graduated high school now. Now I have to go out and find a job. I have to do something about my education. I've got to establish myself in life, but I also want to constantly chase this buzz that I love. That first summer after graduating high school, I would go over to a friend's house, usually on Friday nights. His mom would get beer for us under the condition that we behaved ourselves and we didn't drive. She would kind of watch us. She would drink too, but she would always watch us. And if we started getting out of hand, she would put a stop to it. And if we needed a ride home, she would drive us. But I looked forward to it every Friday night. We'd go over, we'd watch baseball, we'd eat pizza, and we'd drink beer. But at that time, I could only drink about 4 beers before passing out. Everybody else was drinking more than me. And I remember early into that summer, this is 2014, I remember telling myself I need to build up my tolerance. Because everybody else around me is able to drink and not pass out. I need to build up my tolerance. I need to be able to drink like a normal person. And I can't pass out after 4 drinks. I need to start drinking a little bit every day. But what I discovered was I slept really good after a night of drinking. I slept like a rock. And I started slowly relying on it to fall asleep at night. Even if it was just 1 or 2 drinks before bed, I slept great. And I would wake up the next morning and I felt good. But I would spend the whole rest of the day thinking about it. I wanted more. I was quietly thinking about it, and in the back of my mind, I knew I was developing a small problem. I'm only 18. I'm too young to have an addiction to this stuff. Maybe in 10 or 20 years, it'll become a problem, but it shouldn't be a problem for now. I'm gonna keep going with this because I like it. Eventually, I got myself up to about 6 beers a day. I thought no big deal. A lot of people drink 6-packs in a day. I thought that most people drank a 6-pack a day. I thought that was just what adults did. Even though my parents didn't do it, everybody else I saw was doing it. 6 beers became 8 beers. My tolerance was building, and I started drinking earlier and earlier into the day. I used to only drink at night, then I started drinking in the late afternoon, and then the mid-afternoon, and then the early afternoon. You can kind of see where this is going. 8 beers became 10 beers. And by the way, I was buying it underage. I found a liquor store that was about 10 miles away from me. They wouldn't card me, and I was going in there every day. I had 2 jobs throughout college. One of those jobs was working at a radio station, and another one of those jobs was working in a cigar lounge. And both of those jobs, I was able to quietly get away with drinking on the job. Even though I had been talked to about it a few times, people had busted me before, I was still well behaved. I never caused any problems. I was very quiet about it, but I was able to get away with it. 10 beers becomes 12 beers. By the way, I'm not even old enough to drink yet. At that point, I'm only 20, and I'm drinking 10 to 12 beers a day. I noticed that when you're drinking that much, it becomes expensive, especially when you're on minimum wage, whether you have 1 job or 2 jobs. It starts eating up your finances. So I started buying the cheapest stuff I could find. 12 beers became 14 beers. I started drinking earlier into the day. One morning I woke up and I was more hungover than usual. I went to the refrigerator. I thought, what the fuck? I'll try it. I drank a beer first thing in the morning. My hangover was gone. I felt good again. And that's when I discovered morning drinking. I finally turned 21. 14 had become 18 at that point. And when I turned 21, the party was on. I had spent a lot of nights partying before I turned 21. And a lot of those nights, even to this day, I will tell you that they were some of the best nights of my life. Some of them I don't remember, but I remember how happy I was during these parties. And I partied often. "16 beers, 18 beers. Okay, so now we're looking at about 20 beers a day. And I had just turned 21. Eventually, I started getting tired of beer. Beer wasn't doing it for me anymore. In fact, I couldn't even handle the taste of it anymore. Just the thought of beer would make me sick. But at this point, I'm dependent on alcohol. Even though I wouldn't admit it to anybody, I would admit it to myself. I was dependent on alcohol. I knew deep down that I couldn't go a day without it. I didn't have a bad life. I had no reason to be drinking this much. I simply did it because I liked it, and it helped me sleep, and it made me feel good, and it made me comfortable about myself. I was almost always well behaved in those days when I drank. Almost always. There were a few moments where I'd lose control. I would say something that I shouldn't say, or I would maybe do something that I wouldn't do, that I shouldn't be doing. But I think the worst thing that I did, and this is a very important thing that I've left out so far, is throughout all these years between the ages of 18 and 21, I'm driving every day under the influence. Even though I didn't feel drunk, if I were to get a breathalyzer test, I would fail it. And not only that, I'm driving drunk in the middle of the day, driving past schools where there's kids walking on the sidewalk, driving past parks where there's moms pushing their strollers, and I'm drunk, and I'm driving right past them. I never got pulled over. But if you were to pull me over and give me a DUI for every single time that I drove, I would be in prison for life, because it was hundreds, possibly thousands of times that I did that. So I had given up on beer at the age of 21. I couldn't do it anymore. And I knew I had to cut back because I was starting to feel sick and tired frequently. I knew the alcohol was causing it. And I thought, well, what's healthier than beer? Definitely not water. I know, red wine. I'll switch to red wine. It's a little cheaper if you buy it in bulk. It's a little classier. You can get away with it in a different way than you can with beer. And it's something new. Let's give it a try. I bought a bottle of wine one night thinking that one bottle was going to do it for me, but I ended up getting back in my car, going back to the liquor store and getting 3 more bottles. So I had drank 4 bottles of wine this first night that I had officially switched to wine. I woke up the next morning and I was more hungover than previously. Then I started drinking in the morning every day. I started leaving a little bit of wine in the last bottle, and I would stick that bottle under my bed for when I woke up the next morning. I'm still juggling these 2 jobs and going to school part-time, community college. I started bringing alcohol in my backpack to school because in between classes I would go to the bathroom and I would quietly drink. I would sit in a bathroom stall, quietly open a drink. My hands start shaking. I'm not eating anymore. I'm losing control of my behavior, and I'm becoming unhappy. I knew I needed help. I knew I couldn't do it all by myself, but I just didn't know how to start. I gave up on wine eventually. The same thing happened with beer. I got sick of it. I couldn't do it anymore. I switched to gin and whiskey because I like them both. I still had the same girlfriend from high school. She was putting up with me, and I don't think at the time she knew the extent of my problem. She knew I drank a lot, but I don't think she fully knew at that time how much I depended on it, because I did my best to hide it from not only her, but her family, my family. I was always trying to hide it. In 2016, a friend of mine decides to take his own life for no reason. And that sent me spiraling. I completely lost control of my drinking. My behavior started changing. I became more violent. I had a short temper, and I would snap on anybody. And at that point, I didn't care about my 2 jobs anymore. I didn't care about school. All I wanted to do was sit in my room, drink, curl up into the fetal position, and pass out. That was all I wanted to do. I spent most of my time drinking alone anyways. 2017 rolls around, and that was really the last year that I could still drink and have fun in a way. 2017 rolls around, I'm drinking about the equivalent of 25 drinks a day, spread out throughout the day. And most of that was done by myself, so nobody else would see it. 2018 rolls around, and I'm just getting worse. I'm getting worse every day. I started admitting to people that I'm having a problem. I started admitting it to close friends that I was losing control. It wasn't hard for them to tell anyways, because obviously they could smell me as soon as they saw me. Everybody kind of knew at that point that I was a functioning alcoholic, and everybody was telling me I needed to get help. I needed to get help. But just the thought of stopping drinking was so scary. I didn't want to think about it. And there's a symptom of alcohol withdrawal called delirium tremens that you really only get if you're addicted to alcohol. There's social drinkers that drink too much, but then there's alcoholics. Alcoholics, we get this thing called delirium tremens. We call it the DTs. And that's when your hands are shaky, you have hot sweats, cold sweats, you're starving but you can't eat. It's just the worst feeling in the world. You can't sleep because every time you lay down and you close your eyes, you hallucinate and you have to wake up. There were so many nights where I hallucinated things that weren't there. Visual and auditory hallucinations. So you would hear somebody talking to you as you're laying in bed trying to sleep. You'd hear somebody whispering in your ear. Or you would feel somebody's presence in the room that you were in. That only happened on those nights that I didn't have enough to drink. If I had plenty to drink, I would knock out and I would sleep fine. But each night I needed more and more and more and more. It just never stopped. It was a vicious cycle over and over again. I was terrified of the idea of stopping drinking. I thought, if the alcohol doesn't kill me by the end of this year, then I'm gonna fucking kill myself because I can't take it anymore. I've dug myself into a hole and I can't get out of it. I finished school, kind of. I dropped out, let's say that. And I had given up on life completely. I was just barely holding on to these 2 jobs, which shortly after, I get fired from both of them. In August of 2018, I started training at a new job, which is the current job that I have today. And the man who was training me just so happened to be a recovering alcoholic. And as soon as I would get in his car every morning, he would smell me. And he knew right away. And I swore to him that I was going to try my best to stop drinking because I needed this new job. I had dropped out of school. I had nowhere to go. I had no real skills. I needed to do something, and I wanted this job badly. But I just couldn't stop drinking. I end up getting sent to the hospital August 15th, 2018. I was on my shift at the cigar shop. I was training in this new job. I was working at the cigar shop this particular day, and I passed out. And there was a customer in there that called 911 for me. Everybody in that cigar shop knew why I had passed out. Everybody knew. And I get taken away via ambulance. My blood alcohol content was 5 times the legal limit that day. I still had another bottle in my backpack because my plan was to finish my shift, go home, and drink that bottle. I never got that chance though, because I was laying in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm. At that point, the secret was out. Everybody knew. My whole family knew. My girlfriend knew. All my friends knew. I got a text message from my boss that night from the cigar shop. That job ended right then and there. I went in a few days later to apologize and say goodbye. And that was probably the lowest point of my entire drinking career. Mind you, I'm only 22 years old. I had pretty much lost everything. I had no money. The only thing I had going for me was training at this new job. That was all I had going for me. And I was this close to fucking it all up. That was August 15th, the night I went to the hospital. And I was able to go an entire week without having a drink after that. I went 6 or 7 days, and that was huge for me. But I have this addiction, and I fooled myself into thinking I'm not an alcoholic. I just need to learn how to have 1 or 2 beers, and that's it. That lasted for about 2 days, and after about 2 days of juggling 1 or 2 beers, I slammed back into it again. I lost control completely. I had started going to AA meetings. They were kind of helping, but they weren't doing a whole lot for me. Or let me say this, I wasn't putting in the work like they were telling me to do. I thought you just go to these meetings, you sit, you listen, you come out and you're cured. That's not it. There's actually work that you have to do outside of these meetings. You have to get a sponsor, you have to do these steps. You have to actually try. You can't just sit there, listen, say praise be to God, and you walk out and you're cured. That's not how it works. Early September, so 2 weeks after the hospital, I was drinking more than I was before I went into the hospital. I was losing control of my muscle functions. I couldn't control my hand movements that well anymore. Sometimes my jaw would lock up. I wasn't eating. I was shaking violently. I was vomiting blood on a regular basis. And at that point, I had completely given up. I wanted help at that point because I knew that I was going to end up dead by the end of the year. If not from the alcohol, then by gunshot wound, self-inflicted. I went over to see a friend. My girlfriend drove me, and she was just, God bless her, she was a wreck. She drove me to see this friend. I told her it's the last hope I have. This guy has been sober for a while. He can help me. And we sat on his front porch all day, September 4th, 2018. I had some beers on his front porch. He was talking to me for several hours. My girlfriend was sitting next to me. And I don't remember exactly what he said that day. I don't know exactly what he said to me. But whatever he said, it stuck. Whatever he said to me, it worked. I think he scared me into sobriety, to tell you the truth. I think he scared me into not wanting to drink anymore. I went to bed that night. I don't remember going to bed, but I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I was hungover as could be. And I said, this is it, no more. I'm not drinking today. I didn't tell myself I was gonna quit drinking forever. I told myself I'm gonna quit drinking just for today. I'll worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes. I miraculously made it the entire day, September 5th, 2018, which is my sobriety date. September 6th, I do the same thing. I'm fighting these withdrawals, but I'm just telling myself it's only for today. September 7th, 8th, 9th, so on and so forth. After about a month, the withdrawals were pretty much gone. And I had gone an entire month without drinking. That was the longest I had gone since I was 18 years old. It felt good. It felt good. As soon as I got over those withdrawals, as soon as I got over that hump, for those first few months of sobriety, it was easy. They call it the pink cloud when you first get sober. Everything's perfect. Your life is getting back in order. People are forgiving you. You're making your apologies to people. You're actually getting things back on track. But what you don't realize is that after a few months, the world didn't stop turning just because you got sober. The world keeps going. People still act the same way that they did. People still make decisions that affect you. The only difference now is that you're sober and you have a way of controlling your actions, not other people's. You can control your own actions. My life got very difficult in that first year of sobriety. I had this new job that was very stressful. My relationship ended, which sent me into a downward spiral of its own, but I didn't pick up a drink throughout all that. I was living with the guilt of the way that I treated people while I was drinking. It didn't matter if I apologized to them because I had already done so much damage to these people's lives. Apologies don't really mean anything. Apologies don't change what you did. So I had to learn how to deal with these feelings without numbing them with drinking. September 5th, 2019, I got a year of sobriety. And it had been a tough year. It was not easy by any means. I wanted to give up so many times, but I did it. I made it to a year. And I reflected back on it. I thought, okay, what can I do differently? What did I do wrong this year? And I want to make it to 2 years. But I want to make this next step to 2 years a lot easier. So I just had to reflect on what I had done wrong in this first year of sobriety, and I carried those lessons into my second year, and I made it to 2 years. It doesn't feel like it's been 2 years. It feels like a lifetime ago, to tell you the truth. It almost feels like a dream. It feels like it never even happened. I'm 24 years old. I haven't drank in 2 years. And you would think that that means I haven't had any fun in 2 years. But really, I've had a lot of fun. More so in this last year than I did the previous year. I learned how to have fun without it. My life is not boring or lame by any means. My life is actually really good. People like me. I have money. I have a decent job. I work out on a regular basis. While I was drinking, I had spent so much time looking for a life greater than anything I had ever had before while I was drinking. But towards the end of my drinking career, all I wanted was a normal life. When I got into AA, they tell you these promises. They promise you a life beyond your wildest expectations. And I misinterpreted that. I thought everything was going to be perfect. I thought I was going to be some wealthy guy with the perfect life. It's not true. But the promises did come true in a way. I do have a life beyond my wildest expectations today. I have a 9-to-5 job. I'm sober. I don't throw up blood anymore. These are all things that I never ever imagined I would have in my life. My life isn't perfect either. I still deal with a lot of crap on a daily basis. But at least I know how to deal with it. I know how to handle myself now. I can do it like a responsible, normal adult. And relapse is always around the corner. Because on a regular basis, I catch myself thinking about it. I catch myself staring at alcohol in the grocery store. I catch myself driving past a bar and looking at it. Relapse is always around the corner, and it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter how long you've been sober. But my life is so good today that I don't want to give this up. In fact, I won't give it up for anybody or any other reason. If being sober was so bad, so boring, I wouldn't have done it for the last 2 years. And I'm going to keep on with it. And I'm going to make it to 3. Maybe 4. And I don't want to think too far ahead into the future. But to those of you that helped me in September 2018, you know who you are. And thank you. I promise you guys I won't fuck this one up.